welcome back to my channel, Bookish Brie X. My name is Brianna, and today I have another reading vlog for you. In this video, I'm going to be reading The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, the Gothic Victorian suspense thriller, and I'm really excited for this. I'm about 100 pages into the novel so far. The setting is very gothic and eerie, and it has a strung out suspense. The first paragraph, our main character, Walter, he runs into his friend, Professor Pesa, in Brighton, England. He saves his friend from drowning, and he ends up inviting his friend to go over to his mother and sister's house in Hampstead, just right outside of London. And while they're having dinner, Professor Pesa tells Walter about this opportunity to be a drawing master for two women at a house in Cumberland near the Lake District, and he ends up taking him up on the offer. He goes home to his house in London just to pack and get ready for the next day to head up to Cumberland, and on his way into London he runs into this mysterious woman in white, which I was really surprised by. I figured that the woman in white would appear much later on. I think I had this sort of vision that it would be like the turn of the screw, where there's this ghostly figure that just appears in the new house, but that isn't the case. There is an actual woman that he runs into, and the imagery that is shown and the suspense, it feels so cool to be in the world. It feels like I've been immersed back in time into the Victorian period in the autumn time, and it's really very cozy and thrilling and exciting to see. It has very appealing English landscapes. We get to see Brighton and London and Cumberland, and it's really cool, all places that I've been to, but then just set in the Victorian period. I'm absolutely loving the suspenseful scenes. I'll read just one of the first little bits where we're first introduced to the woman in white. Okay, so this is just in chapter 3 on page 47 when we're first introduced to the woman in white. I had now arrived at that particular point of my walk where 4 roads met. The road to Hampstead, along which I had returned, the road to Finchley, the road to West End, and the road back to London. I'd mechanically turned in this latter direction and was strolling along the lonely high road. Idly wandering, I remember what the Cumberland young ladies would look like when in one moment every drop of blood in my body was brought to a stop by the touch of a hand laid lightly and suddenly on my shoulder from behind me. I turned on the instant, and with my fingers tightening round the handle of my stick, there in the middle of the broad, bright high road, there, as if it had that moment sprung out of the earth or dropped from the heaven, stood the figure of a solitary woman, dressed from head to toe in white garments, her face bent in grave inquiry on mine, her hand pointing to the dark cloud over London as I faced her. Being about 100 pages in, there are quite a few references, once he's already in Cumberland, to his exciting adventure of meeting the woman in white, and I really love the suspense and eeriness and gothic feels that we get from this novel, and the really eloquent language makes it really a joy to read. Being a woman in the 21st century rather than being a man in the Victorian period reading this, I do see quite a few issues with the language revolving around women, this being written by Wilkie Collins, a man, and also being narrated by Walter, who's also a man. There are just a few questionable pages so far in the novel that I've read on the views of women. So one of them is after our main character had their encounter with the woman in white. He ends up seeing her off in a carriage, and then just a few minutes later there are a couple of men who are speaking to a police officer, inquiring about a woman that has escaped from their asylum. On page 55, our main character is thinking about their encounter with the woman and questioning whether they did the right thing in letting her go. And what he says is, some of the strange questions put to me by the woman in white after my ill-considered promise to leave her free to act as she pleased had suggested the conclusion either that she was naturally flighty and unsettled, or that some recent shock of terror had disturbed the balance of her faculties. And then just a little ways down it says, what had I done? Assisted the victim of the most horrible of all false imprisonments to escape, or cast loose on the wide world of London an unfortunate creature whose actions it was my duty, and every man's duty, mercifully to control. And then also one of our other main characters, once he gets to Cumberland, there are two women that he's teaching to draw. There's Miss Marion Holcomb and Miss Laura Farley. And in the bit where he meets Mrs. Holcomb, she ends up saying so many mean things about herself and her sex. Miss Holcomb says about herself, "We are such fools, we can't entertain each other at the table." She's speaking about women as a whole. And then she also says, "Women can't draw, their minds are too flighty and their eyes are too inattentive." And so there are just quite a few bits of the novel where I can really tell it was written by a man in the mid-Victorian period. I think I would have a lot more of a criticism for it if it were someone from today, but overall, I love Victorian writing, and I'm so excited to continue reading this. And I will read the back of this book just so you can have a bit more of an idea of what it's about. I find this back bit to be really interesting. The Woman in White was a tremendous success when it first appeared in 1860. Gladstone put off a theatre party in order to read it. Thackeray sat up all night to finish it, and it has not lost its power to enthrall as much for the force and flexibility of Wilkie Collins's characterization as for its masterful plotting and maintenance of suspense. From the moment when the woman first appears to Walter Hartright on the moonlit road in North London, the reader is caught up in the spell of the book and held by it to the end. Among the many memorable characters, the finest is generally agreed to be Count Fosco, the Napoleonic villain whose corpulent figure and eccentric habits add actuality to his melodramatic role. If The Moonstone was the first great detective novel, The Woman in White is probably still the greatest mystery thriller in the language. And I really like hearing how Gladstone put off a theatre party to finish the book. It just feels really exciting, and with Thackeray staying up all night to read it, I definitely understand the appeal, and I'm thoroughly enjoying this book so far. I'm excited to be along for the ride, and I hope to stay up late reading this book on multiple occasions. And this is just the little tag. I got it from Oxfam for 99p. Great bargain. I'm very excited to read a book that is labeled probably still the greatest mystery thriller in the English language. So later today I'm going to be going to Shocktoberfest, which I'm so excited for, at Tully's Farm in Crawley. There is this big festival that has 9 haunted houses and a Halloween show, and so I'll be going to that tonight. I will take you along with me and get ready for a really cozy, fun October vlog. Get yourself a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and please enjoy the video. I'll see you again soon. Bye! Today is now Saturday morning. It's been a few days since I last updated you. I'm now on page 264 of The Woman in White, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far. It is filled with mystery and intrigue, and it shows like psychological layers with the characters. I'm now on part 2. The first part was 220 pages, and it had 3 narrators. The first one was Mr. Allégro, who I mentioned in the last clip. He is a drawing teacher, and he goes up to Cumberland to be the instructor for 2 young women. So it follows his story for a few months, and then it goes on to a lawyer, Mr. Gilmore's perspective, and that's only for about 20 pages. And then the next perspective is Mrs. Holcomb, and it goes still in chronological order, and I like the different formats. For Mr. Gilmore, because he's a lawyer, is quite formulaic speech and very observable what he notices from the family. And then with Mrs. Holcomb, with Miss Holcomb, It is diary entries, so it's really interesting to get different glimpses of the characters. And on the back of the book it mentions Count Fosco, and we've just now been introduced to him. He's meant to be the villain of the story. So yes, it's really very good so far. I'm done reading for the day. It is Saturday, it's the 16th of October, and Joel and I have a few errands to run. There's actually a busk that I'd like to get of Mozart that I found in town. Probably sounds slightly pretentious, but I want it to go on my bookshelves. I think it's really, really pretty. I'll show it to you when I return. Yes, last time I updated you, it was before I went to the Haunted House festival, and it was so much fun. I inserted a few clips of the festival. I tried taking videos inside the haunted houses, however, it was too dark and my iPhone camera quality isn't strong enough to pick up the dark images. But yes, there were 9 haunted houses that we went to and a Halloween show, which was so much fun. On the way there, we walked from the train station to the farm, and it ended up being the scariest part of the whole night because for about half of the 3-mile walk there was no sidewalk, and so we were trying to rush around cars, and then we ended up going over a barbed wire fence to walk in a farm, and there was an electric fence right nearby. So all very scary, and I have quite a few scrapes on my legs, but it was such good fun. And yes, today Joel and I are going to go to the open market, which is this big sort of food market, so we'll get our vegetables there. Joel's planned out some recipes for us for this week. So yes, overall it's going to be a really nice weekend, and it's been raining this morning, and Joel and I were reading on the couch together, which was really nice. Welcome to another reading update. Today is now Monday, so I've been reading this book for nearly a week. I'm a bit over halfway through. Let's see, just today I read from page 264 through to 356. So I read over 100 pages in one sitting. It is such a good book. I am loving it so much. My initial thoughts on the way that Collins speaks about women, I think I sort of take that back, because our main characters, Miss Farley, who becomes Lady Glyde, and Miss Holcomb, they are really represented in a very positive light, and most of the story is from their point of view, and has to do with sort of the inequalities and discriminations that they face as women. And so I don't think it's Wilkie Collins himself who has any sort of negative views on women. Anyway, the novel is so incredibly fascinating. I did a bit of research into The Woman in White and kind of looked at the history behind it. The Woman in White was originally published in a serialized format in Charles Dickens' magazine called All the Year Round. There would be weekly issues, and during the weekly issues there would be little segments of different novels. So during the time that The Woman in White came out, it was also in the same issues as A Tale of Two Cities came out, so that's really interesting. Just because something is considered a classic, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be a challenge to read. Classics really just mean novels that were written a long time ago. And with The Woman in White, it is considered a sensation novel, so it combines romance and realism, and it has a lot of intrigue and mystery and murder with gothic elements. The fact that I just read 100 pages, over 100 pages in one sitting, I'm finding incredibly fascinating. I have just reached the end of part 2 of the novel, so we had Miss Holcomb's section of diary entries, and it goes on to Count Fosco for just a very brief period, and that's where I'm at now, and it is so incredibly good. I'm finding it such a joy to read. It is very captivating, it's filled with mystery, it's a perfect book to read during the autumn season because it is really dark and dreary. It's quite melodramatic and very fast-paced, and I think with The Woman in White especially, because it is a sensation novel and was serialized, it really needed to keep the reader engaged, so every section of the novel, it leaves it on a bit of a cliffhanger. I've just downloaded The Woman in White on audio so that I can also listen to it as I'm walking around, because I am enjoying the novel so much. I really want to continue on, but I'm going to read the novel as I walk to meet Joel. It's about a mile away from our house. We're going to go play pétanque, so that'll be really nice. It is quite gloomy and cold out, so I'm going to wear a jacket and a scarf and hope I'm not too cold and that it's not too windy, but it should still be a lot of fun. Also, this weekend, Joel and I found this bust from an antique shop near our house. It is of the Victorian composer Berlioz, so I'm really getting in the Victorian spirit. I know that there are many negative aspects of the Victorian period. However, their art, composers, literature are all really, really lovely. And yes, I do really like the Victorian period a lot. And so, I have this little guy here to read with me. But yes, I think after reading The Woman in White, I will be watching the BBC adaptation of The Woman in White. It looks rather good, and I do like BBC series. So I may just get into the Victorian English spirit and give that a watch. I think that would be a pretty spooky thing. Today I did watch Halloween, the original, the 1978, with Jamie Lee Curtis. And I do really enjoy that movie. When I was growing up, my parents would watch that every year around Halloween. And so it has very nostalgic elements to it while watching it. And so overall, it's just a really nice Halloween movie. Another one that I'd like to watch is Halloween Town, which isn't scary, but it is now the 18th of October, and so I'm just trying to appreciate all things Halloween, because as soon as November comes, I do tend to get more into the Christmas spirit, even though Halloween is my favorite time of the year. So a few plans that I have before Halloween, which maybe some of you are interested in, is, let's see, Joel and I are going to be the two main characters in Over the Garden Wall. We have a few pumpkins that we're going to carve. I think we'll do that a few days before Halloween. I really love the look of illuminated carved pumpkins, so for a few days leading up to Halloween, we will have fake tea lights inside, and they'll just be lit up every single day. Oh, and daylight savings time is on Halloween, so we'll be gaining an hour. This Halloween will be 25 hours, which is fantastic. However, it does mean everything's going to be dark a lot sooner, which is the one negative, but I suppose that's what comes with autumn and winter. Let's see, last night Joel and I had a pumpkin hot chocolate, and that was really nice. I'll insert a photo. That was really fun. We went to Asda yesterday morning and we found little marshmallows that have eyes, and so they're like little skeletons. So the pumpkin hot chocolate has a bit of whipped cream and marshmallows, and that was a really cozy evening, reading and having a spooky hot chocolate. And Joel and I catch leaves every autumn, so we have a challenge to see who can catch the most leaves. It only counts when we're walking together. The fact that we live in a city, we don't catch that many leaves, so it's just when we go on big walks. And currently, Joel has caught 4 leaves this autumn season, and I have caught 6. So that's really exciting, and I'll see you again soon. I hope to finish this book in the next few days. I think it's so fast-paced right now, and I really want to know what's going to happen with all of our characters. What is the resolution going to be, and how are we going to get there? I'm pretty impressed with my reading this week, because I'm reading 2 rather long books. I'm reading The Woman in White and Dune, so they're going to be 2 separate vlogs. But the fact that I've read, let's see, I've read 1,000 pages in less than a week, and both of them are fairly dense novels, and they're not terribly difficult to get through, but they're still pretty dense, and they've not been any audiobooks, so I think I'm trudging along pretty quickly. I would hopefully like to be done with both of them by Thursday. That is the goal, because Thursday is when I'm seeing Dune, but we'll see. I think now that I have the audiobook for this one, it may be achievable that I finish by Thursday. But anyway, I'm really just rambling on, so I'm going to skedoodle to meet Joel, and I will speak to you again some other time. And I've now finished this lovely book, The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It has been such a fun read. This novel was really, really amazing. I loved it so much. The fact that it was the first sensation novel that I've read from the Victorian period, I'm very surprised by how fast-paced it feels. I would say the most difficult aspect of the novel would just be the length and the writing style. So if you're not used to Victorian literature, it could be a slight adjustment getting into it. However, I wouldn't want that to be something to put you off of reading this novel, because it does feel a little bit like a soap opera from the Victorian period. There are so many twists and turns, considering how I mentioned before it being a sensation novel and being serialized. It needs to really grip the reader at the end of each week's edition so that it would incentivize the readers to come back and buy more and to finish the whole novel. And it was really exciting seeing all the twists and turns, and I loved the characters. I loved the atmosphere. Being from and set in Victorian England was such a joy to read. I really like this novel. I really have no negatives for it. It's definitely 5 out of 5, and it makes me excited to continue on in my Victorian literature journey. If you're interested in reading Victorian literature, that this is probably a pretty good place to start, because it is so action-packed. And yes, overall I had so much fun. It was such a nice book to read in October, having it be quite psychological and a thriller with lots of mystery involved and a secret that we're carried along with throughout the entire novel. That means there's really never a dull moment. I'm very excited to read more by Wilkie Collins after reading this one, and it was really interesting doing research into sensation novels and a bit more about serialized novels during the Victorian period. Yes, so I mentioned earlier in this video that I would like to do more of these sorts of videos where I read Victorian literature. In my last reading vlog, I read Dune, and at the end of that video I mentioned that I'll be uploading every Friday. So at least for the foreseeable future, every Friday I will be uploading a reading vlog of me reading Victorian literature. And for future videos, I'm not too sure what I'll read for next week yet. However, I have a few options, so I figured I would share them with you, just as a bit of a preface to next week's vlog. So the first option is Laura Doone by R.D. Blackmore. And this one is quite exciting because it's set in the southern bit of England, so it makes references to areas near where I live. So that is one option. Another one is Barnaby Rudge by Charles Dickens. There are plenty of Charles Dickens books that I'd like to read, but this is the only one I have a physical copy of in my flat. So I have quite a few Victorian novels that I would like to read that are in my parents' house in Colorado. So when I visit there for Christmas, I will bring more of them back. Another option that I have for a future Victorian literature reading vlog, it would be Far from the Maddening Crowd by Thomas Hardy. So those are 3 of my potential options in the next couple weeks. However, I think I will also be doing some charity shopping to look for some secondhand, previously loved Victorian period books, because Woman in White I found at Oxfam for only 99p, so I'm sure I'll get some good deals if I have a peruse around some local shops. Thank you very much for following me along during this week of reading The Woman in White. It's been so much fun, and it's been such a treat to have lots of Halloween autumnal activities that I've done this week. I look forward to seeing you again next week during my reading vlog where I read another piece of Victorian literature. Thank you for joining me while I read The Woman in White. It's been lovely filming this video, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye!